What's up? Hey, I'm Matt. I work on a project called Excellent, where we're very interested in self-sovereign identity and digital ownership and the experience of using that. So I'm here to talk about apps, dApps, and the decentralized web. For some context, some of the other titles we could have gone with are 9 out of 10 dApp users are confused. Here's why. Alternatively, well, that 110 is most of y'all that aren't confused. You could also do decentralized design decisions, a tweet storm. Send us 5 UX issues and get 50 back. And if you're late, we'll just send the UX issues back to you as well. Or my personal favorite. I will actually use this timer to wait 15 seconds. That's how long an Ethereum block is, and that's if you got your gas price correct and snuck in right as the last block finished. You probably have to wait 30 seconds on, average case, and then plus confirmations, plus gas price calculations. That's not a great experience by default. And what we get out of this technology is really, really cool. The ability to own a digital thing without a middleman, have logic controlling it, and generally just operate on digital things as self-sovereign entities is a paradigm shift in the way we interact with the world. This is stuff like digital scarcity, the ability for art to be valued on par, digital art to be valued on par with physical art, because now you have this concept of scarcity, this concept of work that cannot be reproduced. And that's super, super interesting. And this covers things like identity and currency and anything that you want to add the word tokenized to. All of that can be digitally owned. And that's totally going to change the world. But because of the technology we use, it's not easy to use. We have fundamental constraints with, just as a side effect of the technology we chose. Stuff like the language, private keys, mnemonics, transactions, signing, hashing, sharding, all of this stuff is really hard to learn. It's really complex, and users will not want to learn it. And that's just a side effect of the technology. And because of this, because of stuff like Ethereum's kind of slow, dApps aren't apps. They don't feel like apps. They feel slow. They have this very distinct language around them. They are an entirely separate experience from a user's perspective. And they aren't close at all to how I use Airbnb, how I use Facebook, and so on. But I don't think that's a necessity. I think dApps should just be apps. Because realistically, from a consumer's perspective, that's what they're using. They're using your product. They're using your service. They're trying to get some sort of value out of your app. And it shouldn't matter what technology you use. The tech should just drive the benefits, and that's what you sell. And so one of the reasons that this technology is hard to use and dApps feel so different from apps is what I like to call severe asynchronicity. And Carl talked about this just moments before. It's the fact that writing transactions, sending data, changing state takes a long time. You get this very fast round-trip time between your Ethereum node and your web browser, whatever. And you get that very quickly, but that doesn't mean you can trust that that will go through. You only get confirmation after however many blocks your app provides. If you're doing business logic, you need a serious amount of confirmations. And that's unreasonable from a user's perspective. We're talking minutes, hours, and if you're moving millions on Bitcoin, we're talking a day to get confirmation, to be able to move on with your life and go do something else. And that's really hard for users to use. Same thing with reading. Reading is slow. Blockchains are just slow databases, and not just from a writing perspective because you need consensus. They're slow because they are not Postgres, they are not Redis, and they're not Elasticsearch. They are not designed to be these tools, and they will always be slower. And frequently, they just store data in ways that your app doesn't really want it in. A really common example is token balances. If you want the balances of the top 100 tokens, you have to go ask 100 different contracts for their balance. That's not what your app wants. It wants an index of addresses to token balances. So I can do a one round trip, query and show a nice user interface that shows a user all of their balances. This is why my crypto stopped from loading all of the tokens all at once, and just, you have to click on them now, because each request is individual. Each request loads the network. They were destroying their backend by loading all of these at once, because they were talking directly to Infura, directly to geth, directly to parity. And because of this severe asynchronicity, because of these laggy experiences, users don't have confidence in what they're doing. Every time I use a dApp, think to myself, is this working at all? I have no idea. It really is. I have no idea if this thing is doing what I expect. From the way we send transactions, blobs of data that I sign and send off, I have no idea if that's doing what I expect. From loading indicators that are just a nice spinning circle for 15 straight seconds, is that working? I have no idea. And this is so easy to do. It's so easy to chuck a loading indicator, an infinite spinner, into your app. But it completely destroys the user's confidence in what they're doing and their ability to do something and then do something after that on top of that information. So we're working on something called gnarly, which is a very specific solution to this. It's open source, it's on GitHub, it is an alpha, you can use it now. It is a real-time blockchain indexer as a single package process. It's kind of similar to Amber data, but very much scoped down and designed for single app use. If you want a list of token balances for your app, you can use this. Spin it up on your own server, point it to Infura, point it to your own Ethereum node, and generate an index. It takes data from a blockchain and puts it somewhere else in the format you want it in. And it does it in real time. And it does it accounting for short-lived forks and any sort of uncertainties. You can model your confidence in how likely a transaction will succeed, and then use that to power your client and give users really good experiences. And that gives you better write UX. You have very intelligent loading bars. You have context about what's happening behind the scenes. And it gives you better read UX. You get fast indexes, you get searching, you get mixed panel for dApps. All of that is possible. And so here are some examples, but it pretty much boils down to if the data is on the blockchain and available, but not in the right format, you probably want an off-chain indexer. Alternatively, there's data sitting in the blockchain as a side effect of its operations that isn't made available. Stuff like transaction counts, historical data, event logs, and so on, that are just not easy to use. But you could use an off-chain indexer to pull that out and make it usable. And another part of dApps that make them feel super unfriendly and different is the language you use. What is the right level of technical language that we should be displaying to users? Think about email, think about Gmail. My mom doesn't know what SMTP is, but she knows how to use Yahoo. She knows how to use Gmail. And I, as a developer, if I care about SMTP headers, I can click the little arrow that says, hey, here's who it was signed by, here's some information. Same thing with browsers. I can open a developer tool and get all the stuff I want. They design for levels of expertise. They design for levels of detail. And we can do that with dApps as well. Depending on who your consumer is, who your product is for, you can design the language and the experience to focus on them. And here are some other approaches, very high-level ways that you can improve the experience of using a dApp and bring it more on par with how we use apps today. Just don't use the word blockchain, please. Honestly, it's that simple. If you can sell your app without saying the word blockchain, good, fantastic, you've done it. If you can't, think about it. Don't sell the technology. Sell the benefits that you get from that technology. Stuff like immutability, stuff like censorship resistance, stuff like privacy, stuff like digital scarcity, stuff like being your own bank. Don't sell the technology. Sell what you build with it. You can also use optimistic UI, an optimistic state. This is stuff that's been around for years, maybe decades, I don't know. The idea that this hasn't been confirmed yet, but we'll let you go off and do whatever you're going to do anyway. And this is all over the web today. Facebook likes, Twitter hearts. When you click that button, they show you the animation immediately. That hasn't gotten to twitter.com yet. They don't know about it, but you as a user see that immediately. That's optimistic UI. And if that ever, if that like fails, they can just revert it and tell you, hey, that didn't work, maybe go like this again. But the chances of a like failing are 1, low, and 2, it doesn't really matter. You can do the same thing for Ethereum transactions. Stuff like sending money to people. I shouldn't have to wait for that. Assuming I've got my gas price correctly, nothing is going to stop this transaction besides censorship and so on, in which case you have different problems. Nothing's going to stop that from getting done. I should be able to move on with my life and go do what I was going to do. I shouldn't be looking at a loading screen. And you can use the same thing for optimistic state, not just the UI, client side, but you can do optimistic shared state for stuff like exchanges, where someone buys a CryptoKitty, but it hasn't disappeared from the website yet. That's because simply the user doesn't know yet. It's been the intent to buy this CryptoKitty has occurred, but the actual purchasing has not, and so they still show it to everyone else. But you can use optimistic state to remove that UX blocker. Everyone I showed CryptoKitties to tried to buy the first CryptoKitty on the list, and it never worked because someone else had already bought it. Even though it hadn't been confirmed and shown on the website, when you send that transaction, and someone else's will go through first, buy it, and then yours fails. It's a terrible experience. And so you can solve that with these existing patterns. And if you're going to make people wait, because it's necessary to do that in things where you need high confidence, or you need, for example, if you're buying a CryptoKitty on exchange and someone might take it out from you, you might need to make them wait. But make it fun. Let them play a game. We added Tetris to our app that lets you craft tokens. It's super fun. You have to wait 30 seconds, but that's enough for a game of Tetris, and you can resume the next time you have to send a transaction. It's really cool. Send a fun loading GIF. People love GIFs. Just give them one. Give them something interesting. This is your playground. This is your ability to impart your brand on the user. And don't waste it. Don't give them a terrible experience because you're too lazy to make something incredible. So, and if you do give them a loading screen, also give them a ton of context. Give them a timer, a loading bar that's really nice. Tell them, yes, something is happening. We have not forgotten about you. This is really happening. Don't worry about it. Because users need to be reassured, especially when they're using unfamiliar technology. No one will use technology that they can't trust, that they don't have confidence in. And so you have to help them along. Props to AirSwap for doing a great job on this. You get a loading spinner, and you also get a timer, and you get an estimated duration, and it's really good. And there's a lot of easy gains to be done here, especially across developer tools. You can also use passwordless auth. This is a UX pattern that's been around for ages. Simply, WhatsApp does this, Capital One does this, Zeit.co, if you've ever used them, does this really well. I don't manage a password. Same thing, I don't need to manage a private key. You can use passwordless auth user experiences to take that entire complex privacy, personal security concept and throw it away from the user. The user shouldn't care. So you can do this as well. You can also pay for a user's gas. You don't have to have crypto to use Ethereum. You can, for example, subscribe to a service that pays gas for you. You can do this one-off in the case of airdrops, or you can do this as a longer-term thing, as a service. If I want to use this Twitter app, but I don't want to pay for every tweet, I can pay $5 a month, or pay as we go usage, but you don't also have to use crypto. I don't have to own crypto to use decentralized Twitter. I could pay with Apple Pay or Google, or I don't know, maybe it doesn't work with their privacy policies, but you don't have to have crypto to embrace the decentralized internet. And that's really cool. That opens up a lot of usability and onboarding gains. So to wrap up, dApps should just be apps. We'll have made it once the word dApp doesn't mean anything anymore. That's my personal goal, is for no one to say the word dApp anymore. And I'm not doing a great job of it right now. But there are a lot of easy gains we can do from a UX perspective, and I think it's up to us to build things that consumers want to use. I'm Matt. I work on this project called Excellent. We care about self-sovereignty, self-sovereign identity, digital ownership, and making that approachable, making that usable. We've got a Slack channel, excellent.chat. Invite yourself. It's fun. We talk about this stuff all the time. And I've got a fun little non-fungible experiment. If you have a wallet like Cypher, Toshi, Trust, or MetaMask and want to help me experiment with the bridge between the physical and digital scarcity, let me know. Thank you.